All right. Good evening, y'all. Good evening. My name is John Anchi. I'm the executive director of Raise Your Hand, a citywide parent advocacy organization. On behalf of Raise Your Hand, friends of Bret Harte, Kartemquin Films, welcome to Black Students Matter, Educational Equity 1963, 2020, and beyond. We're excited for y'all to join us for the screening and discussion of the 63 Boycott documentary, which tells the story of the 250,000 students who boycotted Chicago public schools to protest racial segregation. People often wonder what they would have done during the civil rights movement of the 60s. It is no longer the time to wonder anymore, but rather the time to act. While the fight for freedom has never stopped, our country is in a moment of holding the mirror up to itself. We must not waste this opportunity. We all have the agency to build a world that works for all of us, and our collective actions in this current movement will echo across future decades. One West African symbol that has grounded me for the past decade in movement work is the Sankofa bird. This heron is pointed in one direction, but has its head turned backwards. It teaches us a lesson that in order to make progress in the future, we must reach back and examine the past. I'm overjoyed that everyone here today has the opportunity to hear directly from Ms. Rosie Simpson, a parent activist who led the 63 boycott to demand the resignation of CPS CEO at the time, Benjamin Willis, for his Willis wagons. We'll also have the chance to hear the wisdom of other members of the Bret Harte community, including Erica Walker, a parent, social worker, and activist in the community, and 3 current Bret Harte Elementary students, Jalen, Jefferson, and Jade. They will discuss the lessons learned from how the lessons learned from the 60s can be applied to the inequities of this pandemic and to the current civil rights moment. There'll also be time to field questions from the audience, so please use the Q&A feature below. We are recording this webinar and we will post on our social media pages the link for other folks to join, and then we'll broadcast this event also in the future. We will close out the evening with a note from Rachel Dixon, the producer of the documentary, who will talk about the curriculum, and Mr. Bright, the principal at Bret Harte. Get comfortable, y'all, sit back, and enjoy. Hey, Aiko, we're not hearing the sound right now.
Maybe if you unmute yourself.
Their talent is the white race.
We're taking our case to the street.
We're still protesting. You gotta keep fighting. How could they stop us?
In spite of Brown versus Board of Education, Chicago schools were racially segregated.
All right, boys and girls, any of you tell me what you think the word vanishing means. Audrey?
Vanishing means disappearing.
Do you see Elmo? Show me. Oh, you know, here he is on the giant shoulder.
Even as a young person, I could see a difference in the quality of the environment and the resources. The schools in the predominantly white areas of the city had more, and they had better.
The books we get, they aren't new books, they are secondhand books. And some of the teachers have explained it to us, and we don't have enough books to go around to each student, so we have to share books.
I'm not getting what I should because somebody is sharing what I should have all for myself.
As a student, I was very aggressive on education, but there was a lot of prejudice. You know, you could look someone in the eye and you know what you wanted, but it wasn't being given.
At that point, colored kids went to Sexton and the white kids went to Ogden. But my mother got me into Ogden, where there were 2 black students entering high school. I wanted to be a research scientist. I went to my guidance counselor and she said, "You people coming in there with your high ideas and and she was very angry. And she said, "After all, who have you seen who is colored and a girl who is a research scientist? And you are colored and a girl." I ended up in vocational school and I was going to be a secretary. And this was crushing.
And back in those days, it was the beginning of a journey to begin to try to understand who we were, who I was. What was this condition that we find ourselves in? And my sister, every night, we would just talk about the news, what was going on. Like the freedom rides in the South.
You're under arrest.
One of the avenues for working with the Southern sit-in movement in the 1960s was by establishing groups in northern cities.
We were aware of what was taking place in the South. The Chicago area Friends of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee
was really established to raise money for the action in the South.
But the conditions in Chicago were so horrendous that it became difficult to only talk about the Southern movement. It had to be linked with what was going on here in Chicago.
When African Americans started coming here during the Great Migration, they were contained to the Black Belt.
Chicago's South Side. The line of demarcation between black and white runs along the railroad tracks.
My mom grew up in Woodlawn, and she saw massive white flight. You had the real estate industry who were saying, the blacks are coming, you need to get out now while you can. And then you have the racial violence that happened too.
The landlord has leased an apartment to this Negro family, and the tension has grown in the area.
But segregation in Chicago was not an accidental matter.
The federal government rolled out the red carpet to white flight. There were expressways built for them. Loans were favored to these suburbs. So the federal government aided and abetted segregation.
There was people who say if we integrate the schools, then the whites would flee the city. Benjamin Willis was brought here purposely by the late Richard J. Daley to keep the schools segregated.
Superintendent Ben Willis was the segregationist and the racist.
The mayor appoints the Board of Education. Therefore, he has a responsibility as the chief executive of this city to see to it that our schools line up with other schools.
And I think the state legislature should pass a law that moves Chicago school board from politics.
There was an opportunity for integration to happen when more than half the district was comprised of white students. Why did integration fail in CPS? And I think The very concise short answer would be Richard J. Daley.
The people of the Italian, American, Polish, Lithuanian, German, Norwegian, and Irish, in my opinion, are the finest people any place in the United States and any place in Chicago.
My kids were going to school on half-day shifts, the same as I did when I was in school, because black schools are overcrowded.
A school could be side by side. One would be black, one would be white, one would be comfortable in terms of the number of children in that school, and the other would be overcrowded.
Every time a community changed, the Board of Education changed the boundaries, so it would limit our kids' access to other schools that may have had empty classrooms.
The Willis wagons were put up on the campus of the black schools in order to contain them.
They would take these converted house trailers and turn them into classrooms.
Benjamin Willis did not want black kids to be shipped out into white areas. White middle-class families didn't want them there. So it's like, keep these Negroes in their place here.
Who do you go to? Waller right now. Waller? What about Waller School? Well, right now it's in pretty bad shape. Why is it bad shape? It's crowded. They got, mobile schools.
I was in the trailer. At that age, I just know that I didn't belong in the parking lot. And they had the big building there that had all the facilities in it, and we were out in the parking lot. It's like being detained. Education is nurturing. Do you nurture a child by putting them in a trailer? I don't think so.
It was just a lot of things psychologically that was wrong with that attitude. And there were parents groups that started to boycott in Chatham and on the west side.
We would go around knocking on doors, trying to make people aware why we were demonstrating. We were out to disrupt. We were out to inform. So CORE, Congress for Racial Equality, decided to sit in at the Board of Education. And we sat in there for about a week, starving, because we forgot about planning for food, but we had everything else planned. So we got a lot of PR.
Another explosive protest was led by a woman named Rosie Simpson, who had some union background.
I was living in Inglewood. One day, my children came home and said, we're going to start in a new school on Monday. And I said, where? Their plans were to build an all-mobile unit school between a railroad track and an alley. We were going to do whatever was necessary to stop them, the members of CORE. Went up to the top of the pole and wouldn't come down. We would lay down in front of the bulldozers. We bought chains to lock ourselves to the police cars. The police were horrible out there. And we met with the mayor and the Board of Education.
Mrs. Simpson, you say that it's going to stop?
Even after communicating with the board, we're not going to get any place. So this is why I hesitate to say that I am ready to call off demonstrations.
I have just placed on the desk of the President of the Board of Education and the Deputy Superintendent of Schools a copy of my resignation.
And I really think he was bluffing. The Board of Education refused to accept his resignation, and that sparked the initial boycott.
I was on the Coordinating Council for Community Organization, and we met and decided on all-city boycott. The Coordinating Council put Larry Landry in charge, and all parents were in agreement.
We had leaflets, thousands of leaflets. We would give the little kids leaflets to bring home to their parents. We put leaflets on the L and on the buses.
We had jitneys, black cab drivers, and they would hand out flyers.
I was standing at supermarkets talking to parents about keeping your kids home from school. This is why.
Why are you out of school today?
Because today is Freedom Day.
Why, Ma? Because I want to march for my freedom rights. If I don't go to school, I'm a march.
Yeah, me too.
Some teachers have been saying that if you stay out of school today, then they'll, give you D's. They'll fail you for the day.
And I'm not afraid of myself, but they don't threaten me.
Well, we're praying hardly no students there at all.
I wish the whole school was empty.
And we were being told, if you really cared about these children, you wouldn't be taking them out of school. You would be insisting that they stay in school.
We had several meetings in order to organize freedom schools.
The students would be in churches and in community centers, learning Black history.
Now, Little Blue and Little Yellow were friends, and one day they went out to play with each other. And you know what happened? They turned green.
We sang freedom songs. We talked to the young people about the purpose of the boycott.
And before I be unsaved, I'll be buried in my grave and go home to my Lord and be free.
The boycott was to be a learning experience. This is your future that you're fighting for.
2, 4, 6, 8, we don't want to segregate. 2, 4, 6, 8, we don't want to segregate. 2, 4, 6, 8, we don't want to segregate.
I feel that segregation about school is all wrong.
Why is it all wrong?
Because why should your child go to a different school than my child? I feel that my child and your child should go to the same school. I think it shouldn't be no mobile school.
No more what?
No mobile school. It's too small.
That day, it was all over the school. And we're going to go downtown and protest. And the next thing I know, we're in the march.
On the day of the boycott, I was very concerned with the way I would look. I certainly would want either my gold chain or my pearls. I wanted to look like someone who should have an education.
People marched from the north side, at the west side, the south side, and meet at downtown.
Can I hear it a little more louder? Can you tell? Don wrote the words using This Land Is Your Land. And it was used on sound trucks. It was also on the radio, if I'm not mistaken.
We managed to get that played on the midnight special on WFMT.
That was in my folk singing days. I hadn't heard that in a long time.
And folks put together a long, long banner.
That was dropped from the Board of Education.
And if you would have walked into our central operation, you would have thought you were looking at an aldermanic or a congressional campaign.
Yes, that's the figure right there.
We're keeping score like election returns. We go through those schools, we get calls, I'm in such and such a school, and there's nobody here.
Forestville North has got 8 students in it, and out of a total enrollment of 1,200.
10 schools.
10 schools. We don't have a 10. That's
124 kids in, 2,500.
Just a moment, I'll let you talk to our PR person. Mr. Rose.
Don Mosby. This is an overwhelming success, right? At least 15 schools that we can say have a virtual total boycott.
And all these schools are being ticketed by parents in the community.
There was a 13-point set of demands sent to the mayor, to Dr. Willis, and to the school board.
We started the march from St. Matthew's Methodist Church. People were laughing along the entire route. It was a carnival until we reached the river and the downtown area. That's when the voices started echoing off of the large buildings. And that's when the mood changed, because this was now serious. Just an ocean of people saying we were right, I was right. Forget some instructor who said that I was colored and a girl. I was gonna be a research scientist.
When we planned that march, we knew that most of them would be young people. And so the effort was to be disciplined, don't cause any problems, because you could get a whole bunch of people hurt. You had a lot of members of CORE and SNCC who was organizing, and they were committed to nonviolence.
Downtown, they were so fearful that they'd be rioting, but the children of Chicago had shown the very best of themselves in the way they comported themselves that day. 250,000 students, with the permission of their parents, stayed away from school.
It was like a proud thing to do. It was, we were protesting, about some system that was not correct.
We got a lot of power here. And I want to tell you something. Power like this will move anything. Freedom now! Freedom now! Freedom now! Freedom now!
The feeling was excitement, hope. We've accomplished something.
Especially in the black newspapers, but based upon white. The reporting, it was never successful. But it was a success. And at that time, we knew why. Because head count. They get paid based upon how many kids show up in school. So it hurt them from a financial standpoint.
those dollars that disappeared that day, that clicked.
For the very first time, the city administration gave a racial head count of the Chicago public school system, showing that African Americans constituted half or slightly more of the entire public school population.
Before the boycott, parents were not allowed in the schools. They would lock the doors on us. But it sort of opened it up for us that we could go up to the schools. We were encouraging parents to get involved in the PTAs.
I think the public support increased for the movement in Chicago. But as a result of the boycott, we did not gain any leverage with Benjamin C. Willis nor the Board of Education.
Board of Education did not change their mind about the mobile classrooms.
And there was a second boycott in 1964.
There were groups all over the country interested in what we were doing.
And in Chicago, smaller protests continued during that period.
It took years, but ultimately Willis did leave.
At the same time, Martin Luther King and the Southern Christian Leadership Conference was planning to deal with problems of segregation in the North.
The atmosphere was created last summer for the building of a vibrant movement to end discrimination and slumism in the city of Chicago.
I'm still convinced there's nothing more powerful to dramatize and expose the social evil than the tramp of marching feet.
We saw more than 100 days of marching last summer. That does not mean that any fundamental problems of this school system have been solved. The revolution of human rights in Chicago is far from over. In fact, it has just begun.
The education in Chicago is as bad now as it was then. I think the Black and the Hispanic community should be up in arms.
The way they implement these racist policies looks a lot nicer and politer than it used to. There's no dogs out with the cops this time, but it absolutely has the same impact. This is the largest single group of school closures anywhere in the country.
We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes. We who believe in freedom cannot rest. We who believe in freedom cannot rest. We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes.
It is difficult to talk about integration in CPS when you have only 9% of the district today being white students.
A lot of the whites left the public schools. Some went to private, some went to parochial schools, and some moved out of the city, you know.
What we saw was underperforming schools close, and those students go to other underperforming schools. Why not think about getting some of these poor Black children into well-resourced schools? But we don't really invest in the neighborhood.
I go to Lane Tech College Prep, which is on the north side of Chicago, in the Lakeview area. But I live on the south side, which is in Inglewood. In order to get a better education, I have to sit on the bus for an hour and a half.
I don't think the powers that be want public education to exist. Charter school. It's nothing but another word for private school.
Charter schools are to break the unions, and that's the way I see it.
When do we want it? When do we want it? Now, Mayor
didn't listen, so we're out in these streets, and we're going to continue to be out in these streets until he does right by these kids. These are our kids. These are our schools. You work for us.
Today, we are boycotting the show that standardized testing should not decide the future of our schools and students.
I met a woman who went to my school back in the 60s, and she said they were boycotting the same thing. We're going to make history today again, like the 1963 boycott. We're going to show Ron what it's all about, what the students can do. We're not just students, but we are organizers, we are powerful leaders, and we are the future. So just waiting for him to come out, if he's not scared still, to come talk to us.
Let's face it, your policies are racist. Let's face it, your policies are racist.
Would I march right now? In a heartbeat. I think the boycott produced a good product. Not the school system. The education of going after education produced me. I wanted to be a businessman. So I started a photography company.
It allowed me to become the architect that I am, to try to solve some of the problems we have in America. I remember learning when I went to social work school that children rise or fall to the level of your expectations. Our way out has been education, which is why early on we were not allowed to be educated at all. You know, you could be punished for teaching a black person, a slave, how to read and write.
After the boycott, I've continued to organize parents. But I realized that housing, education, and jobs was interconnected. You needed to be looking at the whole picture.
I became an educator, and we started our own school. We have an African-centered curriculum. We don't understand it, what education is really for. It's not just to get a job. It has to do with helping human beings create or recreate themselves.
There have been times where I felt alone. As one of the few black females getting a degree, but I've never forgotten that people marched for me to get where I am. That mass of people are still there. They're cheering on some hill for me. And you don't forget, the people marched for me.
This land is your land. This land is my land. From California, well, to the New York Island. From the redwood
Hi, good evening, everybody. This is Erica Walker here. We will start our panel discussion. Thank you for joining us this evening. Hope you enjoyed the documentary as much as I did. So I want to introduce who will be participating on our panel. We have, of course, Miss Rosie Simpson joining us, and hope to hear more from her about her experiences and her perspectives about the topics raised in the documentary. We also have Jade Perry and Jefferson Davis, current students at Bret Harte Elementary, who will be contributing to the discussion. So I have some questions. I think I want to start with Ms. Simpson, and just simply say that I'm just in awe of how much you have contributed and how much you have sacrificed personally for this subject. So I just want to say thank you to that. We're standing on the shoulders of a giant. One of the first questions that I want to ask you to try to kind of kick this discussion off, Ms. Simpson, is what would you like to communicate to young people about what it takes to start and participate in a movement?
I would say that to participate in a movement, you would have to research and know what the movement is all about. Committed to doing the best job that you can, but understanding the political arena, understanding what you're involved with, have your goals and know what they are, and stick to those goals and aspirations, and knowing that what you are fighting for may not be accomplished in your time, but understand it takes time to bring about change.
Thanks so much. I want to kind of pull in some of the students, Jade or Jefferson, and see if you have any input or any response to what Ms. Simpson just said. Do you agree?
I agree.
What do you think it takes to participate or start in the movement?
Well, I think what it takes to start a movement is have to gather up information about why you want to start this movement and everything you need to do and people to rally up who else wants to start the movement with you and why it's very important to you to do this movement.
Got you. I heard a number of things, that you have to have information, that you have to have people, and that you have to have your vision or your motivation and your reason for moving. I want to ask Ms. Simpson. Oh, I see she's kind of relocating.
Yeah.
Okay. I would love to ask Ms. Simpson about empowering young people to participate in that decision making. So we can kind of bring this a little bit closer to the ground and sort of talk about our immediate school community, right? What can adults do to encourage young people to participate in that decision-making process, to encourage young people to raise their voice and to take action and to let people know what their priorities are for their school community or their own education?
First of all, adults should listen to the young people in terms of their aspiration, but secondly, they should be willing to be advisors and work along with the young people, because they can't do it by themselves. And because the adults have had some experience, they should also listen to those who've been through the battle on the battlefield. I think they have to work together. You would encourage them to raise their voices. And that's what didn't happen many times. That they didn't, young people didn't have the opportunity to speak up for themselves. But these young people know what they want, and they've been exposed. They have social media. They have all kinds of outlets that back there in those days, my kids did not have. And so I think that they see the things that they want, the things that need to be changed. I think we have to encourage them to change them, but do it in an orderly fashion, knowing in a way that they will be able to accomplish their goals.
Thank you so much. I want to pull in Jefferson and ask you the same question. What do you think adults can do to empower young people to raise their voices and participate in that decision-making process when it comes to the education?
I feel like
if adults just try to understand young people more and try to understand the things that they like and the things they're in touch with, you know, they could help us get in touch with that.
Okay. So, Jade, I wonder if you have any input?
No input.
Okay, no problem. What I heard from Ms. Simpson, what I heard from Jefferson is that adults can do more listening, and that part of laying that groundwork, including young people in that decision-making process and being transparent, involves a lot of listening, active listening, and being responsive to what youth have to say. Okay, makes a lot of sense to me. I have another question for the group here. I feel like part of the beginning of a movement is seeing a difference between what you envision or what you expect or what you dream or what you want, a difference between that and what's on the ground, what's the reality, and picking up on the disconnect there. And so what I would like to ask, and perhaps we can start with Jade this time and hear from all of our panelists, is how do we get from our vision of things or our expectation, our dreams and hopes for things into making it a reality? How do you make a dream come true?
Okay, so how I think that could happen is basically you have to put your word out there somehow, like make flyers or tell the news or whoever that could make it to everybody that could see and hear what you have to say. So that's how I feel that you could do to get your word out there.
Great, thank you. How about you, Ms. Simpson?
I think more before you get the word out there, you have to be clear on what it is you want the word to say and what you want to say. What are your goals and aspirations? Are you clear on those goals and aspirations? And then have a plan to get the word out there strategically. Get that out there so that people would be willing to listen to what you have to say and do it in a respectful way and an organized way. Not to be all over the place, but know exactly what you're saying and how you see that materializing, and be willing to listen to those who may be able to advise you as to whether they think that would work, and you all work together on what you are trying to accomplish.
Got you. Thank you. Jefferson, have anything to add?
Yes. You should go to school, finish school, and go be in school however as long you need to make your dreams come true.
Got you. So I heard a lot. There's dedication, right? Some consistency and persistence when it comes to making that happen. Like you said, Ms. Simpson, earlier, you can't necessarily expect that change to happen overnight, but there's persistence and determination to kind of see it through and be willing to work on it for, days or weeks or months or even years. But also, I heard that it takes some time and space to get very clear on what it is that you want and to not be all over the place, which is the word that you used. So to be specific about what it is that you want. So now I have a follow-up question related to that. What specifically can school communities do to create that kind of space? To create room for that constant dialogue and that constant kind of touching base with what are our goals as a community? What do we want for ourselves? What do we want for our peers? What do we want for the youth at our school? How do school communities, or how can school communities make some space, some existing space for this kind of visioning and getting clear on what it is that we want?
I think it takes the total community involvement. It takes the educational system. It takes the businesses. It takes the houses of worship and just the regular community involvement. The block club. It takes a village to raise children. And then what does education mean to us? What is education? Is education just book learning, or is education more than just academics? And I think, and what does that mean to us? To me, education is more than academics. Education is not only academics; it's experiences. It's preparing yourself for life. And so life is just not academics, it's socialization, it's interacting with others and communities, people that you may not know, that may not be on the same level, knowing how to communicate at every level. And I think coming together and being in agreements or agree to disagree without having strife.
Thank you so much. Students, Jade or Jefferson, I would love to hear from you about this. What do you think a school community can do to create some space, to create opportunities, to like consistent opportunities to hear from the school community about what it is that they want from their community, or what they think would be some positive changes for that school community?
I guess I'll go. So, wait, can you repeat the question one more time?
Sure. So what I wanted to know is, do you have any ideas for how a school community can create a constant space, an existing space for people, youth, parents, everyone that's touched by that school community, to share their input, to share their vision for what they want the school community to be? Because what I often see is that it's kind of like a every once in a while thing. Maybe every once in a while kind of reach out and hear from people. But I like to know, how can it be more than just a once in a while thing? What can we do to like keep this on people's radar, or keep them thinking about what is your ideal school community?
I think they should be learned of this, like they should be learned about everything, so they know, like, it will be continue on generation to generation to everybody, so it won't fade away. So yeah.
Got you. So communication and conversation between generations and kind of passing the torch, something along those lines. Thank you. Makes a lot of sense to me. How about you, Jefferson? Any ideas there?
I believe that Jada covered all of it.
Okay, got you. So one of the things that I noticed during this documentary was that there was some of the resources that was used were newspaper articles, kind of showing how the boycott was covered in the news. And of course, we still have newspapers, but our news sources have changed a lot since then, right? You can get news on the internet. You can share news directly, right? You can take a video, or you can write a post on Facebook and you can share it with your community. You can share it with your friends and things like that. I wanted to hear from our panelists, and I guess anybody can jump in if you have an answer or a response. How do you think we can use our access to communication tools to help spread the word, or to help organize, or to help build these kinds of movements? What can we do to kind of get around those media channels?
Can you hear her?
Excuse me. Can you repeat the question?
Yep. So the boycott was covered a lot in newspapers. We saw a lot of news articles, pictures taken, and telling the story of what was happening. But in a lot of ways, those articles were not, they were not objective. A lot of them were kind of biased and sort of skewing the public's opinion about what was happening with the boycott. What I want to know from you all is, how can we prevent that? How can we use the tools that we have now, the access to social media, for example, to get around that kind of control of messaging and kind of be more in control of our own movements and be our own forms of communication? How do you think we can do that now? Ms. Simpson?
Yeah. Yes, I can.
I feel like we should get non-biased sources to answer the questions and ask some questions.
Okay. Any other input on that?
I didn't hear the last question.
That's okay. So I'm just asking about social media. So how can we use our access to social media? How can we use our access to communication channels to get around the bias that can often happen when things are reported through, say, newspapers, things like that?
I don't, we have to be careful what we put out there, but I don't know how much we can control social media except putting out exactly what we want them to say, that they won't be able to expand on it or twist it in any kind of way. So we have to be clear on what we put out on social media.
Okay, thanks for your response. So I'd like to kind of shift gears a little bit and give Jade and Jefferson an opportunity to ask Ms. Simpson any questions that they have of their own for her.
Okay, I'll say my question first. My question was, what do you think the difference is between protests and the boycott and protests now?
Oh, there's a vast difference in protest then and protest now, because you have problems that you didn't have back then. You didn't have the violence that we have now. You didn't have the social media that we have access to social media right now, and so there was a vast difference. You had clear, concise goals and aspiration, and those organizations which had their own goals and aspirations was able to come together and coalesce around one single goal, and that was the educational system. Even though some was concerned about housing and different things, and we did have some gang problems, but not like we have today. So in dealing with those kinds of things, however, and jobs and housing, but we were able to come together around one common goal, and that was the education of our children. And I think that one of the things is that we did not deal with the systemic racism that young people are dealing with today, in addition to education, in addition to housing. All of those are interconnected. However, you can't have put out all the brush fires. So you have to come together and set priorities. What are our priorities? What do we want to work on change right now? And so that we have priorities, and we're together on those, and seeing what we can accomplish first. Any small accomplishments we ought to appreciate, because things didn't get like this overnight, and we're not going to change them overnight. So I think that one of the problems is we don't have today organizations and groups working together. There may be one on the west side working on something that they're concerned about, the south side or southwest side, and there's no coordination. I think that we need more coordination, even though we have better ways to coordinate with the social media. We're not using that in the best way possible.
Thank you. Thanks for your question, Jade. Jefferson, would you like to ask one of your questions to Ms. Simpson?
Yes, I would. Okay. We all know that you participated in many protests to get a better education for African American students. So how do you feel about the closing of multiple predominantly Black schools across the south side of Chicago?
I think that's a problem. I think what happened was the reason why you have all these schools and the closing of them, because during the time that we were protesting, we had communities that were overcrowded, and they built all these schools, and now they have almost empty school buildings in various communities. I think that we should be able to utilize them if we had the proper staff to do it, because you could have smaller class sizes and all of that. So that's what we have to fight for, is getting smaller class sizes and opportunities for kids to get an education. We're containing our kids, and especially in the Black and brown community in the poor areas. They're just being contained for 8 hours or 7 hours or however many days. Some get an education, some is just there, and when they get out, they don't know any more than they did when they left, because the curriculum needs to be looked at. You know, there's a lot of things that need to be changed, and I think that there was no thought in before they started closing the schools in our communities, because you have another problem, and that is safe passage for many of the young people, the fear that didn't exist then that does exist now.
Agreed. Thank you so much. So I want to shift gears again. Thank you all for your questions, Jade and Jefferson. Thank you so much. I want to shift gears a little bit and address some of the questions that have been coming in from the audience. Okay. Let's take a look. I have a question here, specifically about Bret Harte. And I would certainly welcome any input from any of the panelists for this question. How can the Hyde Park community best support the students at Bret Harte?
Through finances, one of the ways, and being participants in the school, concerned about what the curriculum is, changing the curriculum, looking at the students who attend Bret Harte, what they bring, how do we need to change the curriculum at Bret Harte to best educate the student body there. I think that one of the things that we don't have in our education system and community is enough community participation. And I think that's one way Hyde Park can. Those who have time should volunteer their times to spend times maybe in tutoring, assisting teachers, assisting the students that need help, and hall monitors. You know, they're talking about taking the policemen out of the schools. What do you replace them with? And if you're going to replace them, yes, I think they should be replaced, but I think they should be replaced with community leaders and community parents that knows and have compassion for the students and understand some of the problems that students bring with them to the school. And I think that that's what Hyde Park can do.
Got you. To me, that sounds like a lot of relationship building.
Yes.
And investment of time, investment of attention, investment of resources.
And that's what it's all about. investment of time and resources. It's needed. There's no way the federal government or anybody else is going to educate our children. They're pulling money out. They're political gain now. And so that the community, if we want better communities, we want better living conditions in our communities, we have to be concerned about all of the students, no matter where they come from, no matter what their economic conditions are, because it affects us and we can see that. And so that we have to be concerned about the whole person. And so we need more social workers in school to deal with young people who come with problems, to check out the homes and see if there's problems in the home. What kind of assistance do our neighbors need?
Thank you so much for your response. I can only agree as a social worker. I would love to hear students' response to this question. What can Hyde Park do to support Bret Harte?
I feel that Hyde Park should take some attention off of Kenwood and maybe shine a little more on Bret Harte. I think it's a lot of favoritism going on in Hyde Park, so I like to see some of that attention off of Kenwood. That's it.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with Jefferson. Like the most of the schools in Hyde Park, like Dyett and Murray and Kenwood, like those are like great schools. I'm not saying like Bret Harte isn't a great school, but we need like more attention, like the schools that they have. Like we need more attention. We need more things. We need the stuff that they have at their schools.
Got you. So it sounds like as a community, Bret Harte could probably do more to be intentional, maybe active about our school pride, about letting people know about the advantages of our school, the great community that we have, the dedicated teachers, and the wonderful students that we have. Perhaps we can work on getting parents more involved, getting parents to participate in that and spreading the word about their experience with our school. So as a school community, perhaps we can do more to just simply share our spirit and let people know what's great about our school community. I like the sound of that.
Mrs. Walker, can I add
Please.
Yeah, thank you we are just as good as those other schools, if not better. I must say so myself. One thing you can also do, I'll put my email in the chat if anyone's interested in working with us at Bret Harte. We'd love to have you. Things are a little different with COVID going on, but there's still ways that community can help. So I'll put my email in the chat. A second way that you can help us is by joining our Friends of Bret Harte group. So I will put the link in our Friends of Bret Harte. There are so many different ways, and we have great leadership in that group. And it's not principal directed, it's Friends of Bret Harte directed for areas that they want to help out in. We do fundraising, we volunteer time and services. We reach out to other companies and other organizations to try to bring resources and talent to the school. Really some great things are happening at our we've raised, I think, over $15,000 for technology and to give, support for families that have been hit hard by COVID. So lots of ways to do it. I'll put the link for the Friends of Bret Harte and my email in the chat.
Got you. Thank you so much for sharing that. Okay, we've got plenty of questions, so I hope that you're ready to answer some questions from the audience. So I have a question here from a parent, a Bret Harte parent. What advice would you give to students and parents who want to organize to continue the work that you did? So I'm assuming this question is directed at Ms. Simpson, but I would love to hear from any of our panelists regarding this question. What advice would you give to students and parents who who want to organize and continue this work?
And first of all, you would get to know the parents of the students in that school and find out, you know, what kind of time, what are they working, what kind of time do they have, outreach, you know, finding out what kind of problems do they have, how can you assist, and how could they participate. Some may be able to volunteer their time, some may be able to just give financial gifts or at a meeting and not be able to do anything else. What could they do? And so outreach and finding out what are their availabilities and what do they have to offer and what would they commit to do.
Thank you. Any other comments or thoughts about that? Okay, no problem. Let's look at some more of these questions coming in from the audience. I have a question here. What similarities do you panelists see between conditions in Chicago schools in 1963, what we saw in the documentary, and conditions in Chicago schools today? What lessons can current CPS students and parents take from the boycott in 1963 to improve conditions now? So that's kind of a two-part question. You know, what are the similarities between conditions then and conditions now? And then what lessons can we take from the boycott that happened in 1963 to try to improve things now? What were some of the similarities that you saw?
Well, if no one else will answer, I think the similarities and the problems with the differences that during in 1963, parents were not encouraged to get involved in the education of their children. The difference is since that time, parents and the community is encouraged to get involved with the education of their students and their community. So that's a big difference.
Mm-hmm. I'm encouraged to hear you say that. It's nice to hear that compared to then that there's more parent involvement. One of the things that struck me when I was watching the documentary was that although there was like a significant difference in like the styles and clothes and things that the kids were wearing in the documentary, really the faces and voices could have been kids today. They really felt close. Even the way they were talking sounds like kids from Chicago, sounds like people that I encounter, you know, just in regular life. Of course, like not talking about COVID conditions, but you know what I mean. So I definitely felt that similarity. It still felt like these were people that were from our community, which is kind of encouraging in the sense that there's something about our community that stands the test of time, and it's something about the experience of kids in school that will probably like always stay the same. So that was one similarity that I noticed in the documentary.
One of the others is that during that time, you have to know that you had parents who had just migrated from the South for a couple of years. Education was most important to them. And so they instilled that in the kids. And even though they were going to overcrowded classrooms, mobile classrooms, kids were eager to go to school at that time because education was important, because the emphasis was put on them at home. And I think that one of the things is that we've gotten so busy now going to work and trying to earn a living until, even though it's important, we don't have the time or give the time to spending with our young people that we should do, which is crucial at this particular time. During that time, you had students, although you had students, you had some problem students, you didn't have it to the extent that you have it now. teachers have to spend a whole day sometimes having to keep discipline in a classroom where they cannot teach. I think that this is one of the big problems that we have nowadays. And so that we need to look at that. What is causing that? Why does that exist? That's why we need more community involvement, more concern about, because that spills over into our communities, the problems that we have in our community. So we have to be concerned about that. And we have to look at that, the school community as well as the community at large, and business and the churches. Everybody ought to be concerned, ought to be able to come together. There ought to be regular outreach to the community. Everybody in the community. Everybody in the community have a responsibility, a part, whatever district, whatever school, to support that school and that area and those young people.
Thank you so much for your comment. I just want to respond that it seems like in the last couple of months, as you know, we're trying to figure out how the next school year is going to go, that I don't think it's necessarily intentional, but there's sort of like a gap between parents and teachers, and I think it's false, because we share the same goal, which is, you know, caring for our students, caring for our school community, and things of that nature. And I feel like very often parents and teachers are sort of put at odds, as if their priorities are not the same. And I think, you know, having that clear collaboration between parents and teachers, and pushing back against those kind of narratives that that divides parents and teachers, as if teachers are not parents and parents are not teachers, etc. You know, pushing back against that divide and remembering that we have a shared goal, we have a shared stake, which is preparing the next generation as best as we can, and providing them with opportunities to grow and to direct themselves, you know, to make some choices about what they're interested in, what they want to learn about, what they want to do, and to raise their own voices, to self-determine. So thank you for that. I've got some more questions coming in, so many questions coming in. Thank you for submitting the questions. Let's take a look. Ms. Simpson, what do you think is the biggest challenge that our school system will need to overcome today to achieve equity?
I think our school system, one of the biggest challenges to overcome today is our curriculum, and looking at the difference now. What is it, what should our curriculum look like now as opposed to 1963? We are in a technology society now. Technology is all over the place. So what is it that we should be offering in our educational system to our young people? In addition to the regular math and English, we should be, curriculum should be one of the main things that we look at. What do they bring to offer? What do they need? They're in a technological society. All of them are not going to go to college, so they should be, in my opinion, when they come to kindergarten, using their creativities. How do you read a blueprint? How do you draw? How do you create? And things that they have not been offered or have not been introduced to, especially those who are disadvantaged. There's not enough attention given to their concerns, their needs, and what are you interested in? Everybody's not interested in going to college, but what would you like to do? Using, just like you asking Jade And them questions tonight, I think more questions should be asked to the students, to the community, to the parents in those communities, what is needed, and to educate their students to be good citizens in our community and in this society.
Got you. Thank you so much. So it sounds like part of the picture of achieving equity is looking at the content of our curriculum. What are we doing to expand student horizons, but at the same time, where possibly is our curriculum maybe limiting those horizons? Where are areas in curriculum that are potentially closing doors, and how can we avoid that? And it
Correct.
also sounds like another piece of that is providing options in other ways outside of curriculum, providing options in terms of materials, options in terms of offerings, maybe extracurricular offerings, or leads on things that are happening in the community, to try to provide as wide a net as possible so that kids can tap into what they're passionate about, what they're interested in.
Right.
Great, thank you.
Mrs. Walker, I wanted to see if we could, sorry to jump in, to see if we could get a question from Jefferson and Jay. Jefferson, you mind putting the question out for us, please?
Yes. Turn it off. Okay, my question is, the protests now and the protests back in the day are very different. So I just wanted to ask Ms. Simpson, how does she feel about the protesters now taking a less peaceful approach?
I beg to differ. The protesters now, the real protesters now, are not taking a more violent approach. The protesters, the peaceful protesters, the real protesters, are protesting the way we did. Unfortunately, now, because we have so much going on, that the violence that you see is not the protesters. It's political, and I don't want to get into it. It's to distract from the real issue of systemic racism, and it's organized. And so we have to, the problem is the young protesters are not able to discern what's going on, or to be able to see and stop what's going on, because they don't know where it's coming from. But it is not the protesters. I'm sorry to differ with you. And the politicians and the police, they all know that that's to be true. It's to deflate from what the real issues are. And that's a whole nother subject.
Thank you so much for your question, Jefferson. Really appreciate that. Okay, I got a couple more questions. I wanted to ask this question. This is directed to the students. What do you think you need to be successful in the classroom? What do you need to be successful in the classroom? So if you could wave a magic wand and have what you needed, everything that you needed to be a successful student in a classroom setting, what would that be?
Well, to me, I really don't think I need anything. I would say like an upgrade to it, like an upgrade to what I already have instead. So that's what I think. I don't really think I need anything now for my education. So, but for students who do, I would probably say more attention for them, for people like learners who need help. Yeah. So.
I appreciate you advocating for students that might need something differently than you. Thank you. How about you, Jefferson? If you could wave a magic wand and have everything you feel like you needed to be a successful, happy student in your school environment, what would that be?
More excitement, such as hands-on activities.
Got you. Makes a lot of sense to me. All right. I think we'll take maybe one or two more questions, all right, from the audience. In the film, Ralph Davis said that he felt his real education came from the organizing and action, from the movement, not from the school system. How do you think we can make curriculum more relevant, real, meaningful, and action-oriented so that our children get the real education Ralph Davis was talking about? I really love this question because I love that section of the documentary where students who had participated in the boycott gave kind of their after story, what happened, you know, later on in their lives and how that impacted their lives, and he was one of them. So I really appreciate this, and I really appreciated his comment as well because it uplifts those different opportunities and different modes for learning. You know, learning certainly doesn't just happen in a school setting. It's constantly happening, and it's experiential. You know, it's related to the things that we remember, the things that we experience. Like Jefferson said, you know, when you're engaged, when it's something that's hands-on, something that's exciting, something that is kind of like sticks with you, or you're thinking about it later on in the day. So with all of that being said, what do you think we can do to make curriculum, to make that school environment more relevant and more meaningful and kind of action-based, and think outside of the box about providing opportunities to learn, experiential opportunities to learn? And anyone can answer this one.
I think one of the things that you have to be concerned about is that what does the student bring to school? What are their experiences, dealing with their experiences or inexperiences, and making it exciting, finding out new things, learning new things about themselves, about their community, about life, about history. I think that that's important. I think that you could come up with some exciting things in terms of the curriculum in that area.
Thank you. Jada, I wanted to give you an opportunity to ask another question if you'd like.
All right. My question was, what was the effect on the boycott? Like, what have you done that has changed over time?
The boycott brought about a change in terms of more community involved and more parents involved in the education of their students. As I said, during that time, we were not allowed to participate in the education of our children. We could go to a PTA meeting, but there was no interaction between the parents and the teachers or the principal. In fact, the doors were locked, and we could not really go up to the office at that time. I think that's changed because that was one of the things that we advocated, and that's a most important change that should have happened during that time. It did happen. So, and I'm excited about that. A lot more needs to happen, but that's one of the things. That's a beginning, and that's a small change, but nevertheless, it was a change.
Thank you. All right, I think this will be our final question from the audience. Question from a Bret Harte teacher. What advice would you give a CPS teacher who would like to teach about the boycott you organized and participated and connect it to current events?
I think it would be an exciting thing to do. And I think that Rachel, who did who worked on the documentary, has some ideas about and have put together some curriculum changes that may help her in that area.
Thank you so much. All right, I think this question actually is a great segue for the next component. I'd like to hand this over now to Rachel Dixon, who is one of the producers of the documentary that we just watched. And she can explain more about a curriculum that has been prepared in conjunction with this documentary. So, Rachel?
Hi. Yeah.
Hi.
Thank you. Oh, I hear a strong echo. Okay, it's gone. It's very strange to get used to talking on my computer and knowing there are a lot of people there. But my name is Rachel Dixon. I was a producer of 63 Boycott, the film you just watched. And we have, over the last year or so, been putting together a curriculum. We worked with MCFA Challenge and a curriculum writer and a handful of educators to put together a curriculum. It's a 2-week-long curriculum. There are 6 lessons, so it spans over the course of 11 days, and it's really flexible, so educators can kind of use it, you know, as they see fit, depending on the needs of their students. We designed it to be for grades 6 through 12, which is a pretty broad age range, but we think that you know, different age students will pick up on different themes and have different types of discussions. So there are real quick, I'll just tell you guys about the 6 different lessons to get people. We literally just finished it. We're still like, we might make some more edits to it tomorrow, but I'm gonna put it in the chat so everyone can see the, it's 63boycott.com/curriculum. I'm gonna type that in. And real quick, I'll go through there's what makes a school great. And so, you know, a lot of the stuff that the students and Ms. Rosie Simpson have been talking about, and Erica in this panel, this great discussion, I think are themes that educators, teachers, and students can talk about in the classroom as it relates to the film and current events as well. The first lesson is about what makes a good school. And so, you know, it really asks students to research the assets and the needs and, you know, what they see working and not working at their school, identifying areas for change, and, you know, kind of analyzing, you know, and learning how we can talk about and advocate for ourselves as students, you know, what types of things we want to see in schools. High schools have a great opportunity. There's a student representative that can be on the local school council. There are opportunities, there's student councils for students to be involved. I think a lot of students don't necessarily know about them, and we as a community don't necessarily encourage students to be involved in designing and developing their own education. So this is kind of an exciting way to pull students in and explore different perspectives on school quality. Then there's the setting the context for the 1963 boycott, and that's pretty historical, and we do provide a lot of primary source material, both from the film, you know, different still photos, and the footage from the film is all available online, and newspaper articles. And so students, you know, depending on their age and their grade, can kind of take different primary source materials and analyze that information and understand the impact of history on the present day, specifically with the causes and effects of racial segregation policy. And then we have viewing the film. So, you know, the personal perspectives and experiences of people like Ms. Rosie Simpson and all the other people you see in the film, and their experience. And then the next lesson is on preserving and documenting stories from the past. And so this is where students, you know, can create historical records of untold stories that they encounter, that they find in their communities, you know, elders that they can interview, You know, the importance of oral histories. Really, this type of stuff can be taught, I mean, even younger than 6th grade. We saw a teacher at a Chicago school teaching this to 4th graders when their school was about to be closed, and they were doing this type of work. So yeah, just engaging the students in documenting history and kind of shaping their own narratives about it. And then there's a lesson on connecting the past to the present. So students can examine strategies to, you know, that different people have used to fight against inequality today, and, you know, in the context of the boycott, but in the context of today. And kind of do a comparative analysis across different social contexts. And then the final lesson is really empowering students to use their own voice to bring about change. There's an activity, participatory budgeting activity, which is, you know, how students can think about values and having their own participation in a community kind of stakeholder experience. And analyzing different goals and how important youth voice is. So some of the things we were talking about, you know, how Jade and Jefferson feel like they want their voice listened to and taken more into account in policy making. Another exciting thing about this film, it's a historical film from the 60s, but almost all of the main subjects that we interview are still around today. And so, you know, people like Ms. Rosie Simpson are available and they have been in schools talking to students. You know, teachers can invite them. Teachers can invite filmmakers if they want as well. And I think what's really cool now, I mean, obviously we have a lot of challenges that we're having to deal with in terms of like figuring out remote learning and how to navigate this new world we're living in. But it also makes it a lot easier for someone to, you know, get Miss Rosie Simpson to pull up her phone and join a classroom for a remote learning experience. So I think that, you know, whoever's a teacher on this webinar, or if you're not a teacher, if you know a teacher, getting more teachers in schools to teach these kinds of different untold stories. Because I went to Chicago Public Schools and I never heard about, until I started working with Kartemquin and Gordon Quinn on this film, I'd never heard about the boycott. I knew nothing about it. And it's definitely been a really formative experience for me to learn all of this important local history. And I think it can be a really formative experience for other students as well. And we also have some interactive digital tools. There a lot of information about local archives, online archives, plenty of ways to get students to dig into primary source material and kind of investigate their own history, you know, which really isn't necessarily told in the traditional textbooks that have a very narrow kind of mainstream version of history. We have a complete online gallery of the raw material from the film so that students can kind of dig through the interviews, learn extra information. That was put together by Media Burn. They're a local video archive here in Chicago. And they're also just about to finish within the next month a digital exhibit on the 1963 boycott. So that will have a lot of this primary source material, a lot of the stills, the newspaper articles. It's a collaboration between the different local archives, the Chicago Collection Consortium, to make all of this information digital and really accessible for students to be able to research this history and apply it to what's going on today. The other exciting thing, which we'll be putting online pretty soon, is Miss Rosie Simpson and a group of 10 other activists, local activists here in Chicago, who were really active in the civil rights movement in Chicago in the 60s, recorded their own oral histories. They, you know, had a small grant from the public library to do that. And so we're preserving all of those histories and putting them online so that they'll be accessible along with the curriculum and, you know, all of these other resources, so that, you know, that history isn't lost. Because if people don't record their stories and don't save them and share them, then they don't get told. So we're really excited to share that. If you want to plan, and, you know, you can contact us, 63boycott@kartemquin.com is an email. I can put that in the chat too. There's the website. The curriculum is free. Oh yeah, I almost forgot. The film is also going to be free, available for free online at least through October of this year. So really take advantage of it. And yeah, hopefully it can be a resource for a lot of people and can be used. And now I want to introduce Mr. Charlie Bright. He's the principal of Bret Harte Elementary. I know, and he's really excited to prepare these students for this great panel. So that was really exciting. Last year, he got the Outstanding Mentor Award from the University of Chicago's Office of Civic Engagement. He was an elementary school teacher for over 14 years. He's been an educator, born and raised in Chicago for the last 18 years. And so I will go ahead and let Principal Charles Bright kind of close us out.
All right, thank you. Thank you for the kind words. And I first want to thank our wonderful students, Jade and Jefferson. You all did a great job today. I'm not surprised, but thank you so much for joining and being part of this. It's not easy to speak in front of a group of over 100 people, so not many people your age can say that. So thank you, you did a wonderful job. Thank you, Ms. Simpson, for not only being a Bret Harte grandmother, a grandparent, but for all your work as an organizer and laying the foundation for what we have and keeping the fight going. So thank you for still working, working on the struggle with us. So thank you very much, Ms. Simpson. I want to thank Rachel for producing the film and for allowing us to share it with our Bret Harte families, with the Hyde Park community, with the Chicago community. We very much appreciate this opportunity. And I too was unfamiliar, embarrassingly unfamiliar with the 1963 boycott, but no longer. So thank you for making me aware and others aware of the struggle that took place. Thank you to Mrs. Walker for being a Harte parent, LSC member, community advocate, and what a wonderful job you did of facilitating this discussion with Ms. Simpson and with the students and with the audience. So absolutely fabulous. Thank you very much for your time and all your efforts. Much appreciated. I also want to thank all those who are joining us online. I can't see many faces, but thank you for learning about this 1963 boycott. Thank you for your interest in helping out at Bret Harte. Once again, please join us, the Friends of Bret Harte, if you're interested in helping with the school and helping with our students. They're wonderful students. We have about 340 of them. Each and every one of them is awesome. And then also send an email to cabright1@cps.edu if you want to help. And then thank you to the Friends of Bret Harte. We have several of our members who helped organize, including Lorraine Richardson, Jacob Rosenblum, Beth Herring, and Aiko. And thank you, Aiko. Last but not least, thank you to Aiko and John Ann from Raise Your Hand for all the organizing they did to put us all together, to set up the meeting. Just a wonderful job. We've been working on this for over a month, 2 months now. So really 2 months now. So thank you again for all your hard work and dedication to students all over the city. Raise Your Hand is impacting. So thank you very much. I just wrote a few notes, so I just wanted to sort of talk about those notes I took while watching the movie and listening to the conversation. And one thing that came up a couple of times, one word was empowerment. It's something that we struggle as educators, but it is our ultimate goal to empower our students, and what does that really mean? And so I sort of wrote down some thoughts about that. It's really allowing students to pursue their interest, like what they're passionate about, what they're interested about, what they crave knowledge about. It's more about theirs, instead of sometimes what happens is, and even as I taught, sometimes I wanted students to learn about what I liked and what my interests were. But really, it's got to be about the students, and it's got to be about what interests them. And so that's one thing we've tried to do at Bret Harte, and we're still working on that. We try to make as many offerings because we all have different passions. Some people are going to go down this route of being an advocate like Ms. Simpson, but some people are going to take different routes. So, but we want to empower people. So if this is the route that people want to go, and they want to organize, then we need to make that possible. So, I just wanted to touch on that word and empowerment and what it meant, at least to me. And so we will continue to do that, and we'll continue to work with not only Jefferson and Jade, but the rest of the rest of our students, and make those opportunities possible. And I can tell you, if you're in some of our middle school classrooms and other classrooms around the building, I mean, the discussions are so rich from our teachers, not only in the middle school, but I mean, K to 8. So, we are having discussions, trying to tune into our students' passions and building that empowerment. I just wrote a couple other notes I wanted to share, because I heard someone talking about space. How do you provide this space for students? It's tough, but it can be done, and it is happening. You have to give them the opportunity to speak about issues, of race, of privilege, because we have some privilege issues, of equity. What is equity? But I think you have to provide, first of all, like a safe space for students to do that. I think students have to be able to sit at the table and make some decisions. And as the principal, obviously, I make a few decisions myself. But trust me, we do include our students, in decisions about money, and we will continue to do that. Our friends at Bret Harte, for example, we asked our students and we surveyed our students, what do you want? We have this money. What do you all want? Do you want more books? Do you want technology? We end up getting a music program as a result of our students voicing, this is something that our students wanted to be, they empowered themselves. And they said, this is what we want. Don't just do anything. This is what we want. So we try to give our students voice, and we'll continue to try to make that available as far as making decisions about money, making decisions about discipline and our justice programs, our restorative practices, giving students chances to talk about that. So we will continue to build opportunities for students to have a voice, because sometimes students are left voiceless. We'll still continue to do work at the student council level, and I'll continue to have a group of students that meet directly with me to give me feedback on what they'd like to see at the school. I put another note here. I think for me as a principal, and then I know there's several teachers in the chat from Bret Harte and from other schools. I think it's also our job to learn what other schools are doing. Not to work in a bubble, but to collaborate with our partners, not only our partners in in Hyde Park, including Ray and Murray and Kosminski and Kimwood, but to go way outside of that and to see what other schools are doing to give students power, to empower our students, and to we know there's great work being done at for example, at Kenwood, as far as organizing, with security issues. This is the issue of either way, keep security or remove security in schools. So we want our students to be empowered and to get those chances to advocate for things they believe in. I just put a few more points. I'm just gonna quickly go down them. I forget I talk a lot. But I think it's important for us to continue to have those honest conversations with students. For us not only to have honest conversations with students and with parents, but to have honest conversations with ourselves, and to really think about these issues of equity and the racism that's going on. Really to have some honest discussions with not only each other but with ourselves, to continue to be reflective. Just and understand that like right now you can't help look at the news and see what's going on. This thing is urgent. Like it's happening and it's serious and it's not getting better. But while it is urgent and like things are happening right now, like I think one thing that I learned from the movie, from the film is you also have to be patient. So what Ms. Simpson's been talking about a lot is planning. This took time. This didn't happen overnight. So while things are urgent, if you want to make real change, and one thing she says, you got to set some goals. You can't have everything right now. Like you got to plan and you got to take some time to do it. So these things, as urgent as they are, you still have to plan it out and make sure that you make decisions and set realistic goals with the timeline. So I think those were just some of my thoughts as I was watching. And I think the last thing I just said is I wrote down here, I wrote a little note to listen, and just to make sure that we are listening. Sometimes you just gotta listen. So I know as principal, I will do a better job of listening to my students, to listening to the Jades, and listening to the Jeffersons, and listening to my first graders and everyone else in our building and our teachers, and try to make this the best school that we can make Bret Harte. And we're one part of the change in Chicago and worldwide. Once again, I want to thank everyone. Before I conclude everything, I would like to give Jade and Jefferson and Ms. Simpson a chance to say like a last word. It doesn't have to be as long as me, but if you could say a last word. We're at 7:58. If you just want to say a word or two before we end this, I would appreciate it. Thank you all again for joining us today.
I just want to say thank you for inviting me. I'm very grateful that I got to learn a part of history that I didn't already know. Thank you.
Jade, you're muted.
Okay. Thank you for letting me realize, because it realized that I got to know more about my great grandma. Cause the video, I only saw half of the video. Like the first time I actually saw it, but I didn't see the whole video of everything that she has done and everything. So it helped me realize more she has done. And yeah. So thank you for inviting me to do this, you guys.
I every opportunity I get, I'm willing to share. And so I appreciate each one of you. I thank Rachel and Iko for inviting me, and raise your hand. Anytime I can have some input, I'm willing to do that. And I want to thank you. I appreciate it. It's a blessing for me to be able to do that.